I've gotten a few comments on here so far. Ooh, I tied this to the drawstring of the blinds because the light was better on this side. But I've gotten a few comments so far about how I seem like a generally positive person, about how I just come off super enthusiastically. And that's because I started to live my life a lot more authentically. So let's talk about it. What up, guys? My name is Katie May, and I help you build a brand based on authentic connection. Today, I wanted to dive a little bit more into authenticity, right? We've talked a little bit about it before, how to really start becoming authentic, and it's through building that connection with yourself through mindfulness and exploring how you want to show up in the world through taking action. But what happens when you run into situations and you feel authentically like you don't want to be happy or exciting or come across as a super charismatic person, right? Mornings and me do not get along, I'll tell you what. But basically, I lost my train of thought. I'm gonna be starting to edit these videos a little bit more once I start creating more time in my life. So what happens when you want to start showing up more authentically, and that authentic version of yourself is really sad, you know, really unhappy, like really depressed? Well, the beautiful thing about connection is you don't judge yourself through it. You just allow those feelings to come through. I still have moments where I'm on the ground crying and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get through it, but like, dang, this is really hard right now. And I think because I give those moments to myself of feeling safe and feeling loved and feeling valued, that a couple days later I'm able to turn around and be like, you know what, like, I got this. Like, yes, it was hard. Yes, I'm gonna get through it. And yes, I can still show up to my authentic self, whether I'm crying, whether I'm unhappy, whether I'm charismatic and excited, you know, no matter what emotions I'm feeling, if I allow those emotions to come through, excuse me, I feel so much better in my body. There's a book that I love. I'll see if I can find a link to it or something. I'm not endorsed by her in any way. I wish I had her contact information. But it's called The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. She has, it's basically like a mix between a book and a journal. So she'll give you insights on her life, on other people's lives that she's worked with. And then she'll have you like fill out some prompts, right? And one of the things that she said that really stuck out with me is, how do you greet people, like right off the bat? Like, if someone comes over and to be like, hey, how are you? You're like, oh, I'm good, how are you? Do you just like go through those motions? Or are they like, hey, how are you? It's like, actually, I'm not doing that great today, but you know, I'll get through it. Like, how are you? Like, I feel like we have this sense of embarrassment and this sense of like not wanting to show up authentically because we're like, oh, like, what if it makes this other person uncomfortable? Like, what if this other person didn't actually feel ready for me to show up authentically? And totally valid. I understand that completely. But I think the more that we look into it, the more that we owe it to ourselves to be authentic. And the more that we owe it to ourselves to actually show up wholly as who we are. And I think the cool part about showing up authentically is maybe they weren't ready. Maybe they didn't want to know about your personal life like that right now. Even if you do keep it super short and super brief. But you also get to see the people in your life that are actually there for you. The people in your life that want to be like, oh wow, like, I'm so sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do for you? Can we talk about it? Like, what can I do for you? Instead of the people who are like, oh, I'm doing good. Like, you get to figure out who is actually here for the authentic version of you instead of this somebody that you've created that's like socially acceptable in this world. Because, un momento. And like, the more that we're able to show up authentically and like to who we actually are, like, the less diseases we're going to have, right? Because like, I don't know about you, but like, there comes a point where my body is telling me like, hey, don't eat any more chips. And my mind that's like high off MSG or whatever is like, eat the whole fucking bag. Chips are hard. I love chips. But there always comes a moment where I can feel it in my body, where my body's like, hey, I've had enough. We can stop now. And my mind is like, don't stop. And I have the opportunity every time I eat chips to listen to my body or to listen to my mind. And it's hard when they conflict. But I think the more that we're able to bridge that gap between our bodies and our minds, that we're actually able to find peace in ourselves. And the more that we're able to like work through these hard emotions in life instead of holding on to them for years and years to come. I know for me personally, one of the hardest moments in my life is when I was in high school. I was about halfway through my senior year, and my dad kicked me out of the house. He tried to unenroll me from my high school classes. He tried to have my therapist stop seeing me. I was also taking college courses at the time, and he unenrolled me from all the classes I was going to take in the spring. And going from that environment and then later on to a university where I was completely alone and trying to figure out what to do at this university when I was taking also junior level classes. So I felt like an absolute child and very set apart, very distant from all of my other like people in the class, because like there weren't really other kids my age. Like, these kids could legally drink, and I just had my right to smoke taken away. So it was definitely a very hard time in my life. And I held on to that anger. There's little birdies up there, they're really cute. I held on to that anger, I think, as long as I needed to. I feel like now that looking back at it, like, it's longer than I would have liked. However, I didn't really know how to work through those emotions yet, so it makes sense to me how long I held on to that anger. And it wasn't until I started to incorporate mindfulness into my life that I was actually able to work through those emotions. And it took another 6 months to a year for me to fully be like, okay, like, I have successfully worked through these emotions to the extent where I no longer hold on to that anger, and I can find a lot more compassion and empathy for my dad in those situations. I hate tags. I also get asked, at least in person, like, how am I so like happy and charismatic and all this stuff? And it's because I found things in my life that actually mean a lot to me, that make me feel alive. And it doesn't mean that every time I show up to those classes I'm like super excited to go, but it does mean that every time that I take the hard choice to show up for myself and show up in those classes, that I'm showing myself that I love myself, and that makes me excited. And what makes me even more excited is sharing all of this good knowledge and information I've learned over the last few years from other entrepreneurs and then just a lot of authors. I love sharing this information and this knowledge because I understand how I understand how big of a transformation it's had in my life, and I want everybody else to also be able to have this transformation in their life if it's something that they want. I feel like some people don't want to show up authentically. Some people still want to point fingers at everybody else in the world and being like, you're the reason why I'm like this, like, you're the reason why. And I think the hard part about showing up authentically is you also have to take a lot of accountability for your actions and for your life. You have to understand that every angry outburst is yours and authentically and solely yours. Other people do not control your actions. Other people might provoke emotions in you, but it is your responsibility to take action towards what you value. So if you value explosive reactions, then you're going to go down the path of having an explosive reaction. However, if you value walking away from a situation, you're going to walk away from a situation. And the hard part about taking hard, authentic actions like that based on your values is, for some people, no matter what, you will always be the bad guy. No matter what, you're always going to be the person that is at the butt of their jokes and the reason for all of their pain and all of their suffering. And I think coming from a previous people pleaser, it's been a hard transition to stand up for myself and to say no, like, I'm not taking this violence in my life anymore. And the people that I've had to set those boundaries with and being like, yes, we were both yelling, but you're the one who decided to take it 10 steps further, and that's not okay. That's where I draw my line. The more I was able to see who was actually fit to have a role in my life, the more that I was able to do my best to set those boundaries and say, hey, if you do this again, this is what I'm gonna do to show my self-love and to protect myself. Because at the end of the day, boundaries are not there to control other people. You can't say, hey, don't do that again. Don't do that again. Don't do it. Don't do it. You know, like, that's not how boundaries work. You get to walk up to somebody and be like, hey, if you do that again, right? It's an if-then statement. If it happens, then this will happen. But if it doesn't happen, then we will continue as normal, right? I don't know if you know any coding. It's like really, really basic coding. You have to treat boundaries the same way. If you do this again, this is how I will respond. And you have to make sure that response loves you. You can't be like, hey, if you do that again, I'm gonna go cry and call your mom. And I'm saying that because I've done that before. Toxic ex-boyfriends seem to always come from toxic moms. Wild. Anyways, you can't be like, if you do this again, I'm gonna call your mom and I'm gonna complain to her and then get mad when the mom takes his side. You didn't control your actions in a way that made you feel loved. You controlled your reactions in a way that you wanted control over the situation more. And I was trying to use his mom as a threat of like, oh, he really won't do it this time. Like, no, if it was that big of a deal, I should have been like, hey, if you do this again, I won't be able to see you for a couple of weeks, right? If you do this again, I'm not gonna have a relationship with you anymore. If you do this again, you will not be welcomed in my house, right? Those are loving boundaries that put me in a safe space, that put me in control of the situation, and also allow me to have more of an authentic approach in these scenarios as well. So I hope you gained some sort of knowledge. I hope that you transform that knowledge into wisdom. If you have any questions on how to build a brand authentically, click the link in my bio. I always offer one-on-one free Zoom calls. And if you have any questions, drop them below and let me know in the meantime what you do to live authentically. Until next time, peace.